Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm Harry, and today I'm going to be talking about drug repurposing, and more specifically when it comes to long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. So today I'm going to outline a little bit about the process of drug repurposing, why it is beneficial when compared to drug development, and what the implications of that and what that might mean for us as a community when it comes to long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome, and how we can drive that forward. Now, first of all, drug repurposing is the process where we take existing drugs that already have a safety profile, maybe they're used for other conditions, and we repurpose them and use them and test them for different conditions and different symptoms. The reason this is so beneficial is simply a case of time and resources. So as you'll probably be aware, when it comes to drug development, let's say Big Pharma have to develop a new treatment, the drug development process is incredibly long and incredibly costly. Very often, these drug trials can take 10, 12, 15 years and can cost northwards of $2 billion. And this is the kind of time and resources that we don't have when it comes to long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm going to talk a little bit now about what I have learned from speaking to researchers about how the drug repurposing process works. So, first of all, we have a pharma company and they have a drug that exists. Maybe it's already in use for another disease. It's used as a treatment or a therapy. Maybe it did pass the safety profiles, but it never actually made it to market. But either way, we have a drug for all intents and purposes. Now, when it comes to wanting to run a drug repurposing trial, how it usually works is the researchers, maybe at an academic institution, they will go to the government or find some kind of grant, and this grant will put up 50% of the funding for the trial. Now, the other 50% will be put up by the pharma company whose drug is being used in the research project. And I think this is quite often why there's a little bit of maybe a conspiracy around Big Pharma funding everything and them being behind it all. And the reason is because they have to put some of this funding forward because they will reap the benefits of this drug should it be successful going forward. So that's why that kind of funding comes from. Now, obviously, there's different problems about getting hold of the drug. It has to make sense from the pharma point of view, and it can't interfere with their existing commercial interests. So that is a kind of another topic. I need to personally dive into that and research that a little bit more. But there are a variety of reasons why you wouldn't be able to get the drug. But for all intents and purposes, let's say that we do get it for this research project. Now, one of the major benefits of running these repurposing trials is we can dive straight into trialing this drug with an existing patient population. Now, the drug has already been through that drug development process. So it's been through the lab testing, it's been through the animal testing, it's been through the phase 1, 2, 3, all of these different trials. And this means that it is already safe for human consumption, which cuts out years of development and cuts out millions of spending. So what can happen is we can use that drug straight away and we can put that into a clinical population. We can test it, maybe a relatively small sample size, and we can see if there's any benefits for any of the symptoms that we're trying to affect. So let's say, for example, the neurological symptoms when it comes to long COVID. We can try one of these existing and repurposed drugs and see if it affects neurological symptoms in some way. Maybe it'll improve brain fog. Maybe it'll help the anxiety. Maybe it'll help a whole host of different symptoms. But we can stick it in this trial almost immediately, and these trials can be relatively cheap to do. They can be anything from 500K or $1 million up to kind of 10 million from my understanding. And even though that does sound like a lot of money, in the grand scheme of things, that really is not. And we can get positive results. From that, we can then do another trial. And not even that, we can even test it and run the trial out of GP practices. So this was something that I came across that I thought was quite interesting, where rather than setting up another clinical trial within an institution, we can actually run it out of GP practices where they prescribe it to people who they think would benefit. They can record the data. And this is slightly cheaper, although a little bit more labor intensive. And we do have to be a little bit careful when it comes to data processing and the quality of the data and so on. But the brilliant thing about all of this is relatively quickly and relatively cheaply, we can get a drug that is proven to be safe for humans, we can get it tested and we can see if it works. And then it becomes a case of going to NICE, which is the regulatory body, which determines who gets the drug, how much, and then also the sort of cost analysis and all of this kind of thing. But the whole process from start to finish can be so much quicker. And from my understanding, this can even be something like 2 or 3 years, and you can have some really, really interesting data almost immediately. So I really think that this route of attacking existing drugs and using it for certain pathways is something that we are already doing, but we can do even more, because there's so much good work out there. There's so much information on different pathways, whether it be neurological, whether it be the immune system. There's so many different potential mechanisms that have been identified. And if we can start testing different drugs and having a wide spread, we'll massively increase our chances of success, rather than where we're currently at, which would be to understand exactly what is going on, the exact mechanism, determine the biomarker, see a pharma, then want to get involved, and then go through the whole drug development process, which can be 10, 12, 15 years, only for then that drug maybe to fail and not work. This is an amazing opportunity for quick wins rapidly and relatively cost effectively. Now, there is an issue with all of this, however, and obviously the current problem is money. And the trouble with getting funding, as far as I can see it, is there is only so much government funding and philanthropic funding that can go round. So there are different funds that provide grants for research projects. There are different government grants that go out, and there are ones that are specific around long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome and so on. But these are in the order of tens of millions. And this simply isn't the amount that we need if we want to be really spreading our chips across different trials and trying different things to see what would work. So from how I see it and how I'm kind of visualizing what this might look like going forward would be two different options, right? And the first would be a philanthropic model. And this would be a centralized pool of donations, and these can be invested by a scientific board into different research projects that are going on. So different repurposing trials, and we can have the scientific board determine which ones are worth investing and putting money into. And obviously, hopefully one of these would come out, and in return, if the drug was successful and showed some benefit for even some aspects of long COVID, then we would have a relatively quickly approved treatment, and all the royalties from that and the revenue would all go directly to the pharma companies, right? Now, there does seem to be a bit of a problem with this philanthropic route, because although there are people out there who are keen to donate, there are charities out there who are keen to donate, there are people who want to give money away. For example, I can't remember his name, but the founder of Ethereum, Vitalik, I think, he gave something like 10 million to long COVID, and that was amazing. But it's very hard to secure this philanthropic donation, because even rich people have lots of money. They want to know that their money is going to a good cause if it's not being invested and there's no return on investment. So that brings us on to the other potential route, which would be the for-profit route. And again, this is very open to ideas, and I enjoy just kind of brainstorming this in front of the camera, because I'm always interested to see what other people would come up with, potential issues. But what I envisaged was, again, a bit like I mentioned with venture philanthropy, a venture style fund, which then invested in different drug repurposing projects. But we would need to find a way to secure some access to the IP rights of the drug. Because in the existing model before, what would happen is the research project would ask pharma to put up some money to trial their drug, and then pharma would get all of the revenue should it be successful. So, usually they would go for it because it's kind of a win-win. And what I'm thinking is how we can make it so that either we are able to somehow secure a portion of that revenue through a royalty share agreement, or securing, buying out the IP right or something along those lines. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but I think that model could then drive a ton more investment from external investors who could see, okay, I'm going to get a return on investment. Because let's face it, there's a huge pool of people who want to make money, and I think there's a huge market here. We have something like 65 million people who are affected with long COVID worldwide, and that number is only growing. We see the economic impact that it's causing across the UK and other governments and countries in the West and right across the world. And they're needing to invest in treatments. They will be investing in treatments. So if we can determine therapies and can find therapies that work, there is a huge, huge market to access that. So from an investment standpoint, I think it is a fantastic one. But yeah, there needs to be a way where we can figure how we can secure some degree of that revenue share. And that's something I'm trying to look into. And I'd be incredibly grateful if you guys had any pointers, if you had any ideas, if you had any contacts or any ideas on that feasibility. But I think that could be a really, really excellent model that we could follow, because at the end of the day, I do think money makes the world go round, and that for profit route where you're showing the investors that they could get a return will allow us to drive tons more money into the area as well. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful, found it interesting. Let me know, as I mentioned, if you do have any ideas. Please feel free to brainstorm some stuff below. Any articles or any links that you think I should look at, please again let me know. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys again very soon.